Well, hello there. This is Virtual Chess Noob, learning and having fun with chess. One of the principles that I set for myself when I play chess is that I want to have fun, especially with casual games, because if you're not having fun, what really is the point, whether you win or lose? Now, recently I met up with a mate from uni. We sort of graduated over 20 years ago. I hadn't seen him for a really long time. And we both decided to meet at Huelo, which I sort of made a video of last week, a really cool bar in Newtown in Sydney. And we played a couple of games, and we were dead set on playing a couple of really chaotic, fun games while having a few glasses of wine. And I think you'll really enjoy these couple of games because they were really fun to play, and I'm hoping that you'll find it fun to watch. Well, let's go take a look. Well, I've got the black pieces in the first game. Gave my mate, who I've named Dr. Magneto here. From the X-Men. In joke, he'll get it. It's probably a bit obscure. Let's have a look. So, my mate is a man of culture, and so of course he starts with 1d4. Queen's pawn opening. And what do we do against the Queen's pawn opening? Of course, England Gambit. And my mate immediately played something a little bit unexpected, declined England Gambit with d5. Now, I know from previous analysis the best move here is to develop a knight with an attack on the pawn, but chaotic chess, I decide, no, let's play c6 immediately, asking the question what they're going to do. My mate, keen on, playing some fairly aggressive chess as well. Immediate c4, really want to hold on to that pawn. So, okay, let's develop the knight. And here they wavered and they captured. And my whole purpose here is that I wanted them to capture because capture back with knight development. Really, really good. That d pawn has now disappeared. All right, so bishop out, ostensibly pinning my knight to the queen. So there is that strategy, bishop to c5. We're looking at the f2 pawn, and I'm keen to potentially sacrifice the bishop with check, unpin tactic. Let's see whether or not that works. My mate didn't see it, developed that other knight, makes sense, but bishop captures the f2 pawn with check. Brilliant move. It's a sacrifice. Captures, knight jumps forward with check, and bang, here I knew I was doing really, really well. Had a little bit more of my wine. I think the first one I had was a Pinot Noir. And in this position, I knew I was doing really well. I was probably quite a bit ahead, and yep, Stockfish agrees. I think it's a little bit better than that, actually. And so I decide at this point to actually play unreasonably, aggressively, very speculative moves just to see what happens. Knight jumps forward. That's a good move, potentially threatening. Knight to c7 with an absolute fork of the king and rook. So knight, queen's knight to d5. Powerful move. I show it in my book, 50+2, Chess Quick Wins, I think page 38. So here I thought, what to do? Now the sensible thing, of course, is just a castle, get it out of the way. But I thought, no, let's do are they going to trade, attack on the queen? Let's see what happens. And here, you can see 0-0-0. And with that move, I'm immediately punished because they developed their king's knight with an attack on the queen. And here I thought, what to do? I could probably just bring the queen back here. But, then that's that. So I decided to play aggressively. Knight captures the g2 pawn with check. And I thought, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. Captures back, take. And I thought, I'm materially ahead. And I thought, even if they take, that knight's going to be trapped in the corner on the a8 square. It'll be fine. I thought it'll just be fine. So it's not fine, of course. You can see Stockfish says that's a mistake because, that knight jumps forward. This rook attacks now as well. So it really just helped the development of my opponent. So obviously queen to h3 out of the attack. They take, king, yep, take. And I thought, look, that's probably stuck. immediately attack. That's a mistake because this knight now jumps forward, attack on the queen, also attack on that pawn as well. Queen to f5. And about here, I think I probably was onto my second glass of wine. So we're playing some Boozy Chess. And, you know, reasonable move, I suppose. And here I thought, I think I've trapped the opponent's knight, because let's see where that knight can go. So it can go here, 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 and here. Every single one of those squares is defended by my pieces. So if I attack the knight, I should win the knight. And here, without thinking, I move the f pawn instead. That's a blunder, because the knight can now go to f7 with another absolute fork. And of course, the f pawn actually blocks the queen's defense of that square. So that was just really dumb. They did that. And I thought, that's pretty interesting. My opponent, my mate's going to get knights on the opposite corner. You know, how common is that? You can see Stockfish says white is completely winning. I knew they were completely winning. I thought, that's fine. It'll be fine. Take. And here I thought, the only way I could not lose is to potentially, you know, force a series of checks. And I was wondering whether or not it might be possible to actually wrangle a, you know, forced, you know, draw by repetition, something like that. Because one of the things is, when all of your pieces are attacking, there's not a lot of defenders. Now, white's queen and rook is still here, so I thought it probably wasn't going to work, but I thought, look, let's just see what happens. King here, check, and now, of course, that file defended by the rook, no more checks. Okay, so now I moved the queen here instead. You can see Stockfish, yep, that would have done a fork of these two pieces. That would have been better, but I didn't need to move the queen, because otherwise something like that would be a discovered check, and then they would win the queen. So had to move the queen. They decided to take knights on the corner. Very, very interesting. And here I decide, okay, let's take. Now, my mate here, Dr. Magneto, thought for quite a while, and decided to play. And in the game, he actually said that this might be a bad move, but he thought that it would be a very interesting, very tricky move. And that was a rook to g8. Look at that, rook to g8, basically sacrificing the rook. And I thought, I can see what they're trying to do, because takes, you know, the queen comes here with check, but I calculate that I thought this was going to be fine. Captures, queen with check, take, queen move forward again. And this is what they were looking at. So one step away from checkmate. However, remember what I said before? All the defenders away from the exposed king. There's no way that queen can provide any defense anymore. And so now I should be able to create repeated checks. And you can see Stockfish says it's equal. It's basically equal. Check, king, check, king, check. And here, white actually makes a blunder, though I don't see it in game. So I thought they were going to capture here. I thought that was fine for me, because it takes away sort of a blocking piece. I could keep giving checks. That's a blunder, but I don't play it properly. So the right move here is actually queen here, check. So queen to g5 check. No, that's a move I play, sorry. It's queen to g4 check. Literally forgot. Now this forces the king into, yeah, so I think this is the right square for them. And here I now have check, defended by the knight. King now forced into this square, and now I've got a royal fork and I win white's queen. So I didn't see that in game. In fact, I almost didn't see this in the recap either. Instead, I played this move check, and now the king escapes back towards their back rank. Check, 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 check. And at this point, we sort of made an agreement that from this point, I can keep forcing checks, and I have to force checks, otherwise they have mate. Basically, we're going to eventually end up in threefold repetition. And so we made a gentleman's agreement and decided to draw. And then we ordered another glass of wine and we moved on to the next game. Switching colors, I have white this time. And of course, what do? Lead with the Vienna. E4, E5, knight C3. And here, my mate, Dr. Magneto, decides to play an unusual move. So the Philidorish defense, so not quite the Philidor's defense, but Philidorish, if it was the King's Knight, it would be Philidor's defense. And so straight out, D4, usually what you would expect is captures. Captures, but because we're trying to play exciting, interesting chess, my mate here plays something very interesting, striking out with F5. Really, really interesting. Now, I had actually analyzed this move before. I don't know why. At some point I did. So I knew that taking here is correct. So captures, and the idea is can't capture back because queens look at each other, whack the queen, white loses the right to castle. So they develop the knight, that's fine. And here I decide I'm going to take my mate's bluff. Okay, they've played F5. I'm going to capture the F pawn. And the idea, of course, is they get to take that back with development. So captures, captures. But here I thought, this looks like a good move. The G4, attacking the bishop. And this is sort of a move that is sometimes available in the von Hennig Gambit lines. I thought potentially that was okay. I had no idea in the game whether that was good or not. You can see Stockfish thought that this actually just brings it back to equality. And the best move in this position actually is bishop to B5, pinning Black's knight to the king. So good to know. All right, bishop moves here. That wasn't the correct move, so basically okay for me. Again, knight forward, they capture, capture. They decided to not capture right away, again, with this whole thing of queens looking at queens. That's okay. Queen E2, balanced. Now they should probably take with the queen and we trade queens, but instead they took with the pawn. And of course, that's not so good because now they've got this isolated E pawn. And it also sort of blocks that file. Fully open D file. Very, very interesting. All right, so I now play bishop to D2. It's interesting, Stockfish says that bishop immediately to G5 is good. And the reason for that is that if black takes, then immediately I have queen to B5 with check and also a fork of the B7 square. So that's that logic here, and that's very, very powerful actually for white. I didn't see that. That's a pretty obscure thing to do, especially when I'm on my third glass of wine. I thought here maybe long castle, wasn't too sure. They now long castle. And here I thought, I'm not sure I want a long castle. I want to keep things interesting. Maybe I won't castle at all, keep the king in the center, and then throw these pawns potentially this way. But the first thing I decided to do here was queen to F3. So potentially looking at that pawn and then maybe have a very powerful battery. All right, so they now play C6, maybe thinking prophylactically they will also defend. Now, but note they've now moved a pawn in front of their king, so a defensive pawn, that creates potentially a weakness. One of the ideas is every time you move your pawn forward, you create weaknesses behind that pawn. And this will actually become really important in this game. I decide to move the other bishop anyway. Now, freedom to potentially castle either side. And I was also actually seeing that their king is on the C file. And I thought, if I leave my C2 pawn hanging, I thought black was probably going to take effectively like a clearance sacrifice. I sacrifice that pawn, and then I could move my rook to C1, and that would make that C6 pawn potentially pinned. So 3 pieces potentially looking at that pawn, and more than that, that knight potentially has an attack, because when that's pinned, a discovered pin, the knight can jump forward unexpectedly. So I actually saw this tactic here. This is about move 12. Oh, this is exactly move 12. So I decided to deliberately hang that pawn. And it kind of worked. My mate captured with the bishop, of course, immediately, rook c1, attacking the bishop. Now, I expected them to just move that bishop out of the way, so I was surprised when they decided to counterattack my queen with e4. And you see, that's a blunder. And what did I say before? Every time a pawn moves forward, they leave weaknesses behind. And here, by moving this pawn forward, the e pawn forward, they've created weaknesses on these squares, and these squares are these two diagonals. A real problem. This pawn blocks that bishop's access to the light square diagonal, and so now queen to f5 check. Queen f5 check, and here you can see Stockfish thinks I'm doing really well. King should probably move here too, so they can potentially shuffle all the way into the corner out of the way and make a mistake. King forward, which basically exposes the king once again to another check along the dark square diagonal now. Here, take. Rook captures, and remember that tactic, that's available. Black, I don't think, entirely saw what to do. And one of the weaknesses actually in the last game, and this game as well, you'll notice that my opponent, Dr. Magneto, tended to be a little bit slow with development. So tended to make attacks, but not develop all their pieces. And that's often a little bit dangerous because you run out of pieces after a few trades. Here, bishop to f4, check down the long square, dark square diagonal. The king here cannot now escape onto their back rank. So this is actually the only good move left for them. King to b6, running away, but exposing itself in front of their pawns, scary looking, and so they decide to block with their rook. That unfortunately was a mistake because captures, I thought they were probably going to capture this way, which they did. And very, very proud of this next move, a knight b5. It's a royal fork with a discovered pin of the c-pawn, so the c-pawn can't even capture the knight. My mate put his hand out to try to capture the knight, then saw the pin. Fantastic. King moves out of the way, capture the queen, all over. Captures, that's cool. Captures, here they give a check, and very simple now. I now run my king basically to a little hidey hole into a nook where it's very, very safe. And at this position, my mate opted to resign. We had a really great night afterwards, just had a little bit of a meal. My wife joined us a little bit afterwards as well. Good game, GG. The big takeaway from this game is to never forget to have fun in chess. Play some casual games, whether over the board or online, and don't worry about gaining or losing points. Play some chaotic, aggressive moves just to see what will happen. I hope you enjoy these games, and thanks for watching.